Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. Today we have Netflix 318th film from 2020. It's the German comedy Christmas Crossfire, or in German, Wir konnen nicht. It's directed by Detlev Buck and stars Kostja Ullmann, Neumann, and Sascha Alexander Gersak. I am Jesse, I'm your host. Thanks for joining me today for another, what seems like a never-ending catalogue of Netflix original Christmas films from the back end of 2020. We're going to get into this film, so as always, if you haven't seen the film and you're interested in checking Christmas Crossfire out, give us a pause and come back a little bit later on, because we kick the show off with the Fast Flicks, where we do a quick little summary of what the film is all about. So this one, it's about a man who tries to stop a murder and gets caught up in the craziness of his new girlfriend's small town. I guess that's the easiest way of putting it. This is almost as much Christmassy as Die Hard, I guess. It's set at Christmas time, and there's a guy that dresses up as Santa, and there's some nice, pretty Christmas lights going on. But apart from that, there's not too much that you can really connect to the idea of Christmas, apart from family. But I'm giving away too much too early. Let's have a look at how this ended up on Netflix. It's an international film, so there's nothing really defined. The credits at the start do say that this is based on true events. I do find that very, very hard to believe, to be honest. But apart from that, absolute donuts. This one was released on Netflix worldwide on the 4th of December 2020. It was filmed in and around Brandenburg in Germany. Translations around the world for this one. So in German, the actual title of Wir konnen nicht anders, it translates to We Can't Help It, which I like so much more than Christmas Crossfire. I know probably for an English-speaking audience that they've probably tried to go on that idea of it being a Christmas film, but the title of We Can't Help It goes so much more in line with the themes of this film, which, again, we will talk about more later on. In Portuguese, it's called Christmas Under Fire. No, because it's not like they're actually celebrating Christmas. They're all joining together for like a birthday, to be honest. In French, it's called A Very Bad Plan. Sure. In Greek, it's called Christmas Fireworks. In Japanese, it's called Unavoidable. Sure. In Polish, it's called There Is No Other Way. In Romanian, it's Christmas in the Beating of the Rifle. Interesting. Russian, it's called Christmas Trouble. In Swedish, it's called A Deadly Christmas. And in Turkish, it's called Christmas Conflict. So a lot of countries have gone with that idea of putting Christmas in the title to try and entice an audience to watch this at Christmas time, I guess. What are the critics and audiences saying about this film? On Rotten Tomatoes, it does not have a consensus. It's only got 3 reviews. All 3 of these reviews are fresh, though. The audience, it sits at 25%, though. That's on less than 50 ratings. On IMDb, it's only got 1,700 ratings. It sits at a 4.8 out of 10. And Letterboxd, it's only got 1,100 ratings. Sits at a 2.6 out of 5. And it's been logged by 1,500 people. So not a lot of people have got online to log that they've seen this film. What are my early thoughts on this film? This was super ordinary. It just felt like a bit of a mess of a plot, which was trying to say a lot, but didn't really get there because the characters were sort of unbelievable. It wasn't funny. It was just a little bit of a waste of time, unfortunately. So, not very positive from my end for this one. Let's talk about some characters in this film. So, there are a lot of characters. A lot of them don't actually mean anything to the film. We'll just talk about the basic ones. So, Samuel, he's our main dude, I guess, that we see. Between him and Edda. Edda's the female. So, but those two are our main characters, and we sort of follow both their pathways in rejoining each other. That's the aim in this film, I guess. So Samuel is an associate professor, so not quite a professor yet. He likes to read. He's educated, and he highlights his masculinity in a talk-it-out way, I guess, which is a very different way that we see masculinity from every other male in this film. He goes to help others first and ask questions later sort of guy. So he's sort of that standout of what a man can be, is what I'm taking from this film. Edda is the young girl that she meets Samuel in the opening moments and sort of convinces him to come home with her for the weekend or go on a bit of a road trip to the country. She's left this small town for the aim of success, gone to Berlin, gone to the big city, but has struggled that whole time and is dependent on her father's funds. Her dad, on the other hand, I guess he seems to be like this big deal in the town, and he's that another idea of masculinity in the wrong way too. Even though he's very respected in that town, he's in a wheelchair for no apparent reason. But he does hold sway, and Etta, she's heading home for this father's birthday, I guess, in this film, but not actually sure why, because by the sounds of it, she hasn't been home for a long time, and the resentment towards him is quite clear. The opening as well, where Sam and Etta meet, the impression I got, or the feeling, was that she was only using Sam to get a lift home because he had a van or had a car. So I don't know. As I said, it's all a little bit all over the shop for me. The other characters, they're all sort of the villains or the henchmen that run around this town. Herman is the boss of the mob. He's on this mission to kill this young kid who was sleeping with his wife. He likes things his way, and his way is getting other people to do his dirty work for him. So that's his villainous side. Katja is his trophy wife, but it seems that she gets around town with most of the men in the film, and she has moments where you think that she could break through and be an interesting character and standing up to Herman and sort of changing the mindset of some of these men in the town, but she doesn't quite get there, so that was a little bit disappointing. The only other side character I'll talk about is Rudy. He's that young guy who's in love with Katja, the wife of Herman, and he's just like a child in love, almost. He's willing to do anything for her. No real life experience, no real experience in anything other than living in this dying town that plays a big part in the idea or the themes of this film. Let's talk about the director, Detlev Buck. 39 directing credits, 98 acting credits. Obviously a lot of work in Germany, so pretty well respected, and I think has some quite interesting and well-regarded pieces of filmmaking. All right, I'm going to talk about some scenes. What are some scenes I liked and some ones that I didn't like? Stand out to start with. I think there's this repeated joke of Sam must be a poet because he reads. I didn't mind that. I thought the repeated joke of that was quite good. There's this Stefan guy. He's one of the mobman's hench people. He gets stabbed. And again, this is one of those moments where they repeat the same sort of joke, but he has these moments of bleeding out and saying he's in pain. I thought that was good. And I didn't mind the scene where Sam, he stands up to Herman and calls him out about being scared to get his hands dirty, and he's like a big mouth and that's all he is, and he asks his henchmen to do everything, and then Sam tells his henchmen, go home to your families for Christmas, and they all walk off on Herman. I thought that was a really good moment. It obviously turned Herman in the back end of the film into something that was a little bit ridiculous, but that moment was good. Things that were a little bit forgettable, the amount of running in this film, through woods, through streets, through cemeteries, wheelchairs through streets, like, it was endless. It was it was just too much. Frank, this police officer, I didn't talk about him as a character because he was just gross, and there's this attempted assault that I'm not sure what it added to the film, apart from another male who's gross and treats women poorly. And like the lines of dialogue from him, there was this line of, kiss me, then I'll help you, or I want a taste of your pie. They were just gross, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure it was needed. There was this scene where Sam and Rudy, they were arguing. So Sam's obviously trying to find Etta. Rudy's trying to find Katja. They're being chased by the mob men. They have this argument. Sam punches him. And then it just goes into this explicit dialogue of thinking about your own masculinity and saying you don't have any. It was just weird and too in your face. We sort of got what was happening in this film. There's a scene where Katja is sitting in her lounge with this wolf dude who's another one of the henchmen. And they're in her house and they're just sitting on the couches, and there's these gross sexual paintings of her all around the house. Didn't land. I thought, again, we understand what's going on in this film. This wolf guy, moments later, he dies, and Herman's there, and the two of them, they recount this time, how close they are. They hunted this boar and followed its blood trail, and they cry together. It just felt awkward. It wasn't funny and it wasn't sad, so I'm not sure what they were aiming for. Rudy and Katja, they get away in this car together, and he sort of tells her that he loves her, and he loves driving with her, and then she's like, I'm always grateful for him for standing up for her, and they kiss. It was just weird. There's this guy, he didn't play any sort of role, but towards the end of the film, the good guys that we'll talk about, like Sam and Etta and her family, they're getting chased by Herman dressed as Santa, trying to kill them. They go and hide in this guy's house, and he's like, well, I get along with Herman, so I'll go outside and talk to him. And he goes outside, and he's just killed. Maybe it's trying to highlight how deranged Herman has come. I think we understood that anyway. The final scene of Herman sitting Sam down, they sit in this sleigh, and they talk, or sled, and they talk about reflecting and losers paying all of the the price, and then Herman's like, not this time, the loser wins, and then he kills himself. I don't know. It just didn't feel right. It sat really weirdly for me, and then post credits, there's this weird scene, almost like a line dancing scene, where all the villains in the film, including the ones that are dead, are doing some weird dance. What was with that? I don't know. I'm not sure what that added to anything either. So some weird choices, some weird scenes, some weird sort of strategies to sort of tell us what the film's trying to say. That's why I'm not quite sold on this one. The themes and ideas, there is lots in this film about what it's trying to say. I'm just not sure it was done the right way. So obviously there's that idea of belonging, not just in terms of a physical place, but that idea of how do you belong in your family? How do you belong in social groups? How do you belong in a town that's so small that there's bound to be some sort of conflict? Love, it's a Christmas film, so the love of your family, your romantic side of love, and that almost dysfunctional love of a town, which brings people back almost because they can't succeed elsewhere. This is very clear throughout the film, is that tension between urban and rural Germany, this small town. They mention it many times that it's dying, and having their land used for resources, like this scene where Etta and the police officer Frank, they just sit next to this pipe and they talk about how they get no compensation, and that idea too, the old towns stick to rules. But in saying that, the young people are striving to leave, to experience the world, but having to come back, and that idea that it's almost everyone for themselves. So how do you create harmony in a situation like this? There was some interesting dialogue on the treatment of foreigners too. Happy to have them help when needed, but then when, we lock them away at night for curfew, so that sort of turns against them as well. So that was an interesting little idea there as well. There is more. The idea that, alienation, how alienated everyone is from each other in one way or another, especially at this time of year where you're supposed to celebrate togetherness. That's that background of Christmas running at the same time too. What does it mean to be a real man? This runs throughout the film, that echoing masculinity to sort of cover insecurities and toxic masculinity. Why does everything need to be resolved with violence? Why can't things be talked out? Which is my take on Sam as a character too. Actions have consequences. That line was repeated throughout the film multiple times. And then that idea, this sort of goes back to the idea of family too, but they talk about those 5 pillars of life, family, money, work, love, and health. And all of those things are played on at some stage in this film, like Etta coming home for family, our Herman guy just chasing money, that idea of work through Etta's father and through the gangsters too, that idea of love between Sam and Etta, and that idea of health too. We do see, multiple people get hurt and injured, and that idea of trying to chase health at times when you need the help of others. What did I take away from this film? I read many positive reviews for this film, which really, I don't know, it didn't. I guess it did surprise me a little bit, but apart from one, I guess none of them actually had any discussion around the actual film or what made it good. It was just a retelling of the story and how they liked the story and the violence, and I guess that sort of defeats the whole idea of the violence in the film. Anyway, I just thought that was a little bit weird, and not many people have actually seen it, so it's very hard to see too much about this film. Also, again, I know with these international films, I'm getting pretty repetitive. This is another one where there is parts of English dialogue throughout this film where there's no subtitles. It makes it extremely difficult, I know, for people like Netflix, come on, pick it up. We click the subtitle button, I want subtitles for the whole film. I want to see the subtitles for the whole film. I'll leave it there. I'm ready to wrap this up. We give the film a rating out of 5. I mean, when I spoke about the themes and the ideas, there is a lot there to like, but I didn't like how it was done. So there's nothing really to recommend here. I did struggle throughout this film. Some of the use of lighting at times and some of the Christmas decorations and stuff sort of kept me engaged at moments, but nothing else. So I did have this lower, so I'm bumping it up a little bit. I'm giving it a 1.5 out of 5. So fairly low for me on that scale. We're on socials. We have Facebook, we have Instagram, and we have X, formerly known as Twitter. The question I want to put out there, this is just a real random one in relation to a moment where Sam's sort of captured and taken to this warehouse, and Herman's dad is in there sort of bunched up, and he goes on this big rant about how the town used to be great, used to have working facilities, lots of people, and there is a sauna in there. That's the only thing that is still working. And he loves this sauna and his ability to go in there, close the door and relax. I just wanted to know, do you like saunas? I'm not not 100% sold. I think I get too hot. But if you like a sauna, let us know and why, because I can't think of anything worse than just constantly sweating and not being able to breathe. Anyway, that's where I'm at. We're back next week. Next week, it looks like a film that isn't a Christmas film. It is a international film, however, from 2020. This one's a Turkish comedy called Leyla Everything. Or in Turkish, it's Nine Kere Leyla. It's directed by Ezel Ake and stars Demet Akbag, Haluk Billinger, Elkin Sangu, Ferhat Canis, and Alishan Yusoy. That's what we've got next week. If you're keen on checking that one out, give it a watch. Otherwise, you're probably going to wait a couple of weeks until we've got a big film coming very, very soon. Other than that, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.